Welcome to the Next Gen CMO podcast, where we sit down with seasoned CMOs and emerging talents in sales and marketing to explore the wins and occasional losses that shape today's leaders and the strategic maneuvers that can help propel you to the forefront of B2B marketing.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Next Gen CMO podcast. Today, I'm so excited to welcome my friend Sydney Sloan. If you know Sydney, which a lot of you probably do, she's a CMO at G2, which is the world's largest and most trusted software marketplace. Before she was at G2, she was the first ever CMO at Drata, which is a compliance automation software company. And she's had a lot of great experiences before that. So we're excited to learn more about her, about leading go-to-market teams, about her perspectives on go-to-market alignment and strategic conversations and all the things. So welcome to the podcast, Sydney.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I'll add, I was a 2-time demand-based CMO council member. And then I think our relationship really too, and the deep experience comes from my 4 years of the CMO at SalesLoft, where I think, account-based and sales engagement platforms kind of grew up together and merged together. So definitely excited to have this conversation with you.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. She's been all over the
been around this merry-go-round. Yeah.
Yeah. This Rev Tech community is small for sure. So cool. Well, so you just kind of gave it, but really quick, maybe if it's a little bit more of the why behind it. But tell us your quick career journey in, 3 or 4 sentences about how you got to where you are now.
I say I grew up at Adobe and in product marketing. So I spent almost a couple decades there, and then went on a SaaS journey and became a CMO at an open source cloud content management company called Alfresco, then SalesLoft. And then I did a little stint as an EIR, which for those of us that have been operators for a long time, it's really fun to go work in the venture side and help and coach other companies on that same kind of growth journey. I actually worked with Demandbase. So it doesn't have to be small companies, because Demandbase was part of the Scale Ventures portfolio before kind of getting back into it for the last few. So just, somebody who deeply loves marketing. There's nothing else I want to do, but also deeply loves leadership. And so I've really enjoyed, the time, at leadership levels, like working on strategy and things like that for companies. And that's kind of what excites me now.
Did you always want to be a marketer? Did you know growing up, I want to be a marketer, or did you just fall into it coming out of college somehow?
I started, working on the events team at my college. So at USC, and I wrote my business plan for the entrepreneur program on an event planning company and had 2 internships for event roles. So I knew I wanted to be in events and marketing. I kind of fell into tech and that path unintentionally. So if you asked me when I was graduating college, I was going to own my own event company in LA and throw big events. But here I am.
This is probably a little bit more of the steady role there. Very cool.
And fun
Yeah.
business, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you get to outside of, events are obviously tied to the business, but marketing, you get sort of that full view. Like you mentioned, really loving the leadership aspect of it. And I assume not just leading teams, but leading companies, leading businesses, leading strategies. And marketing definitely gives you a nice cross-sectional view of that. Is that where that comes from?
It does. And I think too, when after maybe the first time you get in the CMO role, then you realize my role is a leader first in the company. And my job is to align with the rest of the leaders on our strategy. So we have a plan for the company that everybody follows. And so that peer group and peer relationship and ability to impact strategy is so important. But then the cool thing about marketing is that our job is to create that experiences for customers from prospect to growth. And so that gives us also the opportunity to partner across each function of the company. You get to partner with product on product experiences and upgrades. You get to partner with sales on how you manage the pipeline and get people the opportunity. You get to partner with customer success. You get to partner with partners. So we get to play in all parts of the equation. We're not just relegated to our function of quote unquote marketing. If you think customer first and champion the customer.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And actually that's probably brought to life a lot in your EIR role. You mentioned it, but I'm guessing. So this podcast tends to get listened to by either CMOs or up and coming future CMOs. And so I think the probably EIR concept is fairly foreign to folks, especially if they don't come from the VC or PE world. So if you come from a publicly traded company, this doesn't exist for you. But in this world, this EIR stands for Executive in Residence for folks listening. Tell about how you ended up in that, because I know you and I just started a quick conversation about this last week at Forrester. But how did that happen, and what did it kind of do for your soul to kind of not carry a pipeline number for a year?
So I was very fortunate that when I was at SalesLoft, Insight Partners was one of our investors. And I think they have one of the most mature programs out there of former operators who now are part of the venture firm that provides services for free to their portfolio. And so you get access to like all this great consulting work, really. It's like glorified consulting. I don't want to say glorified because it's really high quality. And, they're doing it for 400 portcos. And so you have similar experiences. You're learning from those portcos. I think Vista has a good program as well on the PE side. And so I think it was just timing as well that this gentleman named Craig Rosenberg, who, if you've been around the sales tech, MarTech space for a while, you'll know Craig. And he was kicking up starting a new team at Scale Ventures. And I just happened to be taking some time off. And we had worked with Craig when he was at Topo. And so he's like, hey, Sid, you want to come do this? I'm like, 100%. Like, I said, yes, just to go work with you, Craig. I will totally I know we'll have fun. I know we'll learn together, which I did. And I think that's the second part. So the benefit, I just was going to go play with Craig because I think he's wickedly smart. And I'd already done a lot of advisory and I was doing consulting on my own. But the ability to work with other peers in that same role was the insightful part I didn't realize when I said yes. So learning from Craig, learning from Matt Amundsen, now Maria Pergolino, and Trisha Gelman, like Lauren Vaccarello, like we've all now been part of this network, and we got to learn from each other while advising the portcos. So it's kind of like being in an EAB, but you're not just in that single meeting, an executive advisory board. You're not just in that single meeting. You're actually advising clients, and like a question will come in and we'll all three talk about it or all five talk about it to make a recommendation back to that customer. And so you get that collective experience times incredible, smart people. And so I learned so much too. I learned more than I thought than I gave at some points. So I loved it. Highly recommend it.
I think that's fascinating. Well, yeah, because you hear a lot more of the business challenges. It's one of the reasons I love this job of getting to market to CMOs. And you probably do as well a little bit on the G2 side, but because my primary audience is myself, then I get to talk to people like me all the time, and I exchange ideas and hear things, and you get to do that full time, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, 5 customer calls this week. I'm definitely doing that all the time. I love it. Yeah.
Sort of go-to-market alignment by working with sales executives in residence and product executive in residence and customer experience experts, I'm sure. So how does that translate? What did you learn sort of in that working with other people like you in other functional areas and other peers like you? How does that translate, or what best practices did you bring back to your operating roles that help you drive cross-functional alignment with your peers in real life? I say real life, like EIR wasn't real life, but you know what I mean.
No. So I think it validates even further that was my, like, I've had 2 CMO roles after that. So it's like 2 CMO roles, EIR, 2 CMO roles, and maybe 15 advisory clients / consulting clients along the way. So I've been exposed to roughly 20 companies in a meaningful way. And then when you're starting to work with the portcos, which is a whole nother pool, you realize problems are the same regardless of company size and stage. I mean, it's like, here we go, right? Like $100 million companies that don't have proper budgeting practices put in place, 50 K companies that don't know how to do an ICP, $150 million companies that haven't really gone to refresh their ICP. And so like just the fundamentals and foundations are broken everywhere. And I've been thinking about this a lot. It's like, why do I have to, it's probably not great for a podcast, but it's like, why do I have to keep teaching people their job? Like, don't we know account based at this point? Like, why do I keep coming into companies and they're still talking about MQL? It's like, I've been doing this for 12 years. And, I think it's because like, yeah, we have a lot more tenure. We've been doing this a lot longer. And, people earlier in their career are now running those programs and haven't had that opportunity to learn yet. And they are so bespoke. There is not one way to implement an account-based motion because the customers are different, the buying committees are different, the conversations are different, your back-end systems are different. Like there's, like all of those nuances. While consistently we can say the concept is the same, but the implementation is so wildly different and at different stages of what needs to be fixed, which versus what needs to be built. That I think was the learning. That was the learning. It was just like, it doesn't matter what size or stage. Problems are the same. It's all a mess. And, it's like, where do you start?
Yeah, we look sometimes as we're working on a lot of positioning work right now. And we're like, should we be mapping against company size and stage, or should we be mapping against go-to-market maturity, sophistication, resources, and really about like, how serious are you about this? How invested are you in your tech stack? How much are you willing? Like, how clean is your data? Like, what are all the things like that? To me says, okay, we either need to start here or we need to start here based on that sophistication. And we have huge insurance companies that are at stage 1. And then you have tiny little startups that are like at stage 3 because their maturity is just different based on where they're at in their journey.
I love that. And I'm 100% aligned with you. And, I know that you've got Topher Stevenson on your team now, which is the approach that we took at Drata, which was a maturity level. And what I love about maturity frameworks is you're providing that roadmap for the customer of the journey you're going to go on together. So where are you? Let's do that assessment. That's high value for them. Like where you go in and you say, hey, by the way, you're at novice, or you're at, we gave different names for it, but it was like startup. It stood CMO as was some things I was always remembering. I was like, it was a startup. It was establishing, maturing, optimizing, like different stages. And so you could tell them the path that they were on, not your roadmap. It changes the conversation to be more oriented to the customer. And so it's, you're here. This is the challenge you're trying to face. We're going to help you get to this next stage. As soon as you're there, then this is the path. Then this is what we'll do together. So I'm a big fan of maturity. Big fan.
How complex is it to enable a sales force to sell on that continuum? Like to sell it it becomes much more discovery based, becomes much more asking questions, trying to map need states or pain points back to where they are on that curve. But it's not you're a mid-market bank, here's a solution for you. Like that goes out the window. So how much does that drive kind of that need for really great enablement, really great alignment, really great documentation, content, all the things?
Yeah, I think it starts with discovery. So generally stage 2 in most companies. And so it's like, how do you train them on how to do good discovery? And the outcome of that is the assessment of the stage the company is at. And so there's value exchanged in the discovery process because you're teaching them something they don't already know. And ideally in that discovery process, you're trying to get data from 2 or 3 different buyers or 4 or 5 different buyers. So you're through that discovery, it's getting you access to more contacts in the account because you want to have it be a mix, not just of the technology process, but maybe of the maturity of the people. Change is always such a big equation as it comes to being able to adopt and utilize. And so understanding kind of where they're at, sophistication wise on tech, maturity wise on experience and people. Do they need to put in new roles? I love when companies like create new roles because it's like this whole idea of like new skills, new opportunity. And then I think then it maps to the product capabilities and the packages because the package offerings can then align to the maturity stages. And so it's like, good, better, best models to packaging. And they can understand in advance, like, well, when you move from here to here, this is what you need to budget. And we can tell you that way in advance because we're having this consultative conversation with you. And so I think it really does flip it. So then what do you need from enablement? You need the right discovery questions. You need to teach curiosity and active listening. I know we get all the gong calls and that's great that it does the summary, but to ask great questions, you have to be an active listener. So you can't just ask the questions that. You have to be like summarize and make the question smart. And I think that's a skill. I think that's what you can teach. You can teach curiosity. You can teach active listening. And all too often, and I sit on calls a lot, like they're trying to go and like in their prepared order of like, I don't want to show you this, without actually, when you ask a question, responding to that question with insightful feedback that leads to the next piece of the discovery. So I think if you're going to look at, I know super long-winded, sorry, Kelly. I think if you're going to look at like implementing a maturity model, thinking about enablement in the sales stages and what are those quality deliverables at each stage that the sales reps can provide to the customer, and driving that additional account engagement, that you're never done yet, right? Either like there's always going to be a next set of questions for the next stage. And so it should never, you're just constantly filling out their journey and in with them. So yeah, I was thinking the overlap too of MedPick some way, like in that too, like there is an overlap somehow in those models.
Yeah, probably. But I think that makes a lot of sense. I think what it does is it does force your sales team into a more consultative versus transactional approach, which I think is great. And yeah, I mean, I think great enablement now, and to your point, asking the right questions at each stage, and those questions vary through the conversation as you hear. So I think that's good. That actually,
there's another piece, sorry, I just thought of. So when we were doing enablement on the maturity framework at Drata, we had different rooms. We had the SDRs, we had the sales sellers, we had the CS teams in different rooms, and we taught them the model independently of how they should use it. So I think that's the other part that's really interesting, is because the conversation then stays consistent between the account execs and the customer success or your implementation teams, where it's still a you are here. And so our customer success team adopted it faster than our sales team.
Really interesting,
because they were like, it gave them that point of being able to figure out how to have the upsell conversation or the expansion conversation, again, without leading with product. Do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? No, you're here. This is what you're going to need next.
Yeah, that's really smart. We just went through a whole, we call it the DB Way, our summit program, but we went through a whole kind of sales methodology implementation over the last 12 months to really educate across that bow tie. Like, what are the questions to ask at every stage of that journey? What is marketing? What role what content do you need from us at every stage of that? What's the SDR asking during sort of call number one, discovery? Once you kind of like, how do you qualify them? And then how do you kind of get further into what they actually need?
And then you take those call notes, you throw them in a GPT, and you've got an awesome customer story that you can deliver back to them, right? Like, here's the journey you've been on. Here's the story. Here's a perfect use case for GPT. Yeah.
There you go. That's right. Well, cool. So you alluded to this a few minutes ago. I want to go back to it. You talked about, and you kind of said it just quickly in passing, but you said marketing leaders need to be business leaders first. And I want to dig in a little bit on that, because I love this concept of, I kind of call it I need to be a business athlete more than I need to be a marketing expert. So tell me about, what does that mean, not only for you and your mind, but what does it mean when you're sitting at the executive team table? What does that mean when you're sitting in a board meeting? What does that mean to you?
I think we need to make decisions that are best for the company, regardless of the role you're in. And so that's when I think about first the business, and like trying to understand the market and bringing in market points of view and being aware, like, how does that impact? I think conversations need to always rely on, what's the impact of the business? I remember my first EAB meeting, I was sitting next to Godard, our CEO, and I'm like, ooh, you can monetize that. Ooh, you can monetize that. And I just thinking of like, the product roadmap should be about like, how much revenue is that going to add into our equation by building and shipping these products? And, what should we expect for that? Or if we're looking at acquisitions, like it's all that aspect of the business model, or the problems we need to solve. And then, because it's understanding trade-offs. There are going to be so many ideas, there are going to be so many initiatives, and we need to be able to evaluate all those good options in a way that says, well, we need to prioritize what's going to make the most impact. Do we focus on churn? Because like mitigating 5 points of churn actually creates longer term value for the company than that equal amount of net new revenue. And sometimes people don't understand that. And it's like, well, it's when the revenue gets recognized and like what your base is. And so if you're not conversant in SaaS from us, right? In SaaS business metrics, or understanding what valuations mean and how they're determined, that's a direct impact to your personal wealth, right? Like you're trying to, like, why are we working? Well, we're, doing what we do, but we want to also, create wealth for ourselves and our families. And so if you don't understand valuation multiples, those are things that you need to look into. And especially like now I'm on a couple of boards, and advising from the other side of the board's table is also super interesting. And it's made me a better leader in my company because now I see the board side of things. And when making recommendations, and again, it goes back to that. Like, I love sitting with my CFO talking about exit strategies. And I think today, if you're not, there's 1,200. I was just talking to Jaco from Winning by Design the other day. He's like, there's 1,200 unicorns and there's only 60 slots for IPO. So what's going to happen, right? That's an interesting conversation. Yeah, that's business. Yeah.
I love it. Those are my favorite as well. I just had this conversation. We've been talking a lot about, not about exit, but just about like what's best for the value of the company. And, when our business is split between SaaS, advertising, like media, and then data consumption, and they have different values in the market, right? And so we're constantly like, is that the right strategy? Because we're going to grow revenue in the area with the lowest multiple. Like, is that what we want to do? And trying to give that context back to our marketing team to say, hey, this is why we're leading in this way. But it's also because this is where our customers can grow, they can expand, we can unlock impact, whatever. And kind of balancing that, like not just the financial numbers, but also the customer impact of leading in such a way, which is really interesting. And we even have like, I'm looking at an SDR and I'm like, okay, I have an SDR. I have one SDR that I can flip. Do I want to flip them to partner who has a quota like this? Or I could flip them to new business or expansion, which has a quota like this. And I'm like, ooh, they could probably make a bigger impact on the much bigger quota than on the small one. And so then it's like, ooh, like I know we need this one, but man, to your point, like if I put my big business hat on, I'm going to make a different decision than if I just look at like, who's asking the loudest or what's happening. So
perfect is 100% perfect example. And that is the exact conversation that Jaco and I were having was, that they have his revenue bow tie is the Winning by Design model.
We just put in a last.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you totally know what I'm talking about. And so he's preparing for their upcoming event in San Francisco, it's the week of the 14th of May. And like, he wants to concentrate the whole conversation on the right half of the bow tie, post sales, right? Because if you think about it, if you serve customers, and we were talking about business models, if you serve customers and ensure their success, isn't that happy customer and a referral from them higher value in the total equation than more effort on the left side of the bow tie? And we under-resource. If you look at how much resource and expense goes into net new business versus post-sale and growth, it's not equated. And when you get over a certain milestone, I think he used 50 million or 100 million, it's like that business should balance out around 50-50. I know when I've been in 100 million plus companies, it's like 50% of our revenue should come from net new and 50% of our revenue should come from existing. But what are we doing in terms of our investment models? They are not 50-50. 100%. I don't know a single person that's allocating their marketing 50-50. And so the question is, if you were to do that, what would the outcome be? What would your NRR grow to? How do you, again, going back to that higher valuation question, because that compound actually makes a higher impact on your long-term value. And so, yeah, it was great. Like, I can't wait for his keynote. It's going to be so good. Yeah.
Oh man, he did our RKO keynote last year and he was like, I think he went through 3 Red Bulls during that RKO speech. And he jumped up on tables and he was going.
He's a unique character. Yeah. He is
yes.
Great, crazy good. Yeah. I love that whole team. They're great. Yeah.
Yeah. He got the team pretty hyped up, which was cool. Yeah. And I think to that point, I mean, because I think we see as like the cost of acquisition on new business is so much higher than the cost of acquisition on expansion and renewal. So yeah, we end up allocating a lot of dollars. And the post sales, you kind of like subconsciously even think, well, we can do a little customer marketing, but the CSM's got them, the account directors got them, like customer support's got them. Like we'll do some marketing over there, but we're going to focus on new business. And as a result, to your point, like you probably do get lopsided. You're working a lot harder for probably the same dollars you could have equated differently, because it's a lot easier to get a customer who already loves you to spend more than to get a customer who doesn't know you to consider loving you.
And I would even flip that. One of my jobs after Adobe was I was customer marketing at an enterprise company. We serve big, like 50,000 plus user kind of implementations of collaboration software called Jive. And so like our NRR was 125%. And I got to create the programs that drove adoption. Engagement and adoption were our metrics. I had this slogan that smart, happy customers buy more. And so when you think about that, that means you can't just go ask for more money. You can't. You have to educate them. That's smart. So the first kind of pillar of all the customer marketing programs were around education. And that could, include community. I know, Kelly, you talked about it, how you redid your certification program and what great value that's bringing. And so like, what are the things that we can do to engage community platforms where they are teaching each other? One of my favorite things, we call them customer days, right? Where you go into an account and you educate them on the products, and then they bring in other divisions and you kind of do in-account leads, account days. They were called Adobe days, like we did them there. And so that's the smart, happy. That is sentiment, engagement, voice of customer celebrations, like those moments, those customer moments where you want to have celebration, your events, like, feel good programs for existing customers. If they are smart, they're having success, you treat them well, they're happy, then they will buy more. And now I would say, and recommend you. And so like, that's how I would structure a customer marketing strategy at this point. And again, I think we under-resourced at Jive. We had like 50,000 members in our Jive community. We sold Jive, so it's Jive on Jive. We created 27 global user groups. We had a 2,000 person event every year at the Cosmo in Las Vegas, which was wildly fun. And, our NRR back in 2012, because that's how long ago it was super high. Like our NPS coming out of those events were like 90. It was 100% worth the $3 million we spent on it. You touch that much revenue between prospect and customers. And I just think we've stopped doing that. You just don't see it as much anymore.
We're hosting our first like demand-based like signature event this year for the first time since I've been here. I've been here about a year and a half. So
I was there. I was supposed to speak at the one that got canceled right before COVID. I think that was the last one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Megan Martina was supposed to be the keynote guest. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that was. All I've heard is years ago. So that probably was the last one. So we have one April 30th in London, and we have one in October in New York. And we're super excited about it because of those kind of things, right? It's a mix of prospect and customers, but such an education component, such a strategy component, such a surprise and delight type of an opportunity to be able to build some of those that you hope then, those smart, educated, happy customers then, want to do more business with you, which is always a great thing. So very cool.
If they're not the first two, then you're not going to get the revenue afterwards. They're just not going to buy more, right? If they're not seeing success, if they're not being educated on what it is, and they don't want to come to another webinar. Like I think just also, and I struggle with that too, because we're trying to get into this rhythm of like, quarterly launches and announcements and those, like, how do we capture the attention of customers to let them realize what incremental and innovations we're making. And again, that's it's not one of those use cases. Every company I've gone into, all 4 of them, have not had regular rhythms of launches. I don't understand. Like it's like getting product and like how are they supposed to know? And I know you just had yours. You had a big launch in March. So
yeah. We're working on that cadence because it's the balance is when you have an agile engineering department who's rolling out updates every 2 weeks, which is awesome. It's figuring out, do I sort of like just kind of keep it quiet, keep it, and then spike it? Or do I spike as I go? And so that's kind of, so we have regular launches. The question is, how regular do we want them? I'd love to do them once a quarter. Does once a quarter do it all justice? Do we end up saving a feature that comes out in February that doesn't come out to their big launch in May? And then you're kind of,
I wouldn't turn it, this is, I mean, I'm sure every CMO is listening to this right now is vigorously nodding their head because I think this is the challenge we've had since the move to Agile. And I was just talking to a CPO candidate. We're recruiting for a new CPO. And I love that he said, he's like, you have to decouple the release from the launch. And so product can absolutely continue to release as needed. They can put the capabilities out there. That's fine. But the marketing launch moment, that's where you align on if there are one or two things that you want customers to be able to really know. And that, to me, it's that one theme. That's the launch moment. And that's where marketing will throw fuel on the fire. But yeah, there'll be tier 2 and tier 3 capabilities that are constantly coming out, and you just have a different program for that. So Kelly, I had like a short stint at Zoom where I came in to run product marketing. They didn't have a launch process. And that was like a $3 billion company. Yeah.
Yeah, we just brought in a new product marketer a couple months ago, and of course we brought in Topher. Both are doing outstanding, and they're working on sort of what does that quarterly cadence look like, and what are the themes, and how do we map to those? So cool. Well, I know you have talked about understanding SaaS metrics, which I think is great advice for up and coming marketers or future CMOs. What's another piece of advice you would give, or some sort of one thing you wish you had known before you became a CMO?
Well, I think it's like you have the marketing knowledge, you have the business knowledge, and then you have to be a great leader and a people leader. And so I would say that the other piece to that equation is, getting the right coaching, getting the right skills in place. Because we talked about even, when you're running these programs, like change management is part of it. And we know when you're in fast growing companies, like helping your teams learn how to manage and thrive through change is a skill. And so I would say that too, is like, take your leadership development and management skills seriously. And I'm sure you know this in other statements, like the higher you get up, the more time you spend managing people. And my personal goal after, I was like, wanted to be a CMO forever, got it, felt really good about it. And it's like, well, what do you want to do next? I had a coach actually challenge me on that. Like, do you want to be a CEO? Do you want to be this? And I'm like, no, I love marketing. I don't like, I've heard it's lonely out there. I don't want to do that. And so, it's like, but I really want to be a great leader. And in my personal goal, that's level 5 leader in work and in life, and to lead by example. That's kind of my mission, personal mission. And I don't always get it right? Every situation is different, but being able to manage, lead teams, coach teams through the evolution of growing and maturing and changing based on the dynamics of the business, that's my goal. And, how to have radical candor, how to give constructive feedback, like all those skills now that make being a leader actually more enjoyable in some weird way, because how to tackle some of these difficult challenges when they come up, and like understanding when to keep people or when the fit's no longer there. Like that's the one thing that I've heard the most from founders and CEOs is keeping people on too long. And like, that I've probably gotten a little bit more ruthless about that. Right. Like, and I keeps me up at night. I'm like, should I be coaching? And it's like, but I know in my heart of heart, it's not a right fit for them or for us. And so we just, a coach once told me it's neither right nor wrong, nor good or bad. It's just a matter of fit. And so either the person hasn't been able to scale with the needs of the business, the roles have changed, and so like, it's a mismatch in fit. So,
yeah. Yeah, that's a hard thing. It's one of the things I feel like I spend the most time on, and one of the hardest, but also the most kind of satisfying, that you kind of get to a stage where like, okay, I know what the business needs. I know, and I know what skills we're missing, and I know what the gap is. And then it's figuring out how to obviously manage through that transition and manage your other team members through that transition, which I think is good. But I will say one of the things I underestimated on becoming more and more of a leader is I became a better employee, because I feel like I have a different appreciation for I've seen what more people bring to me that I really respect, or like when they bring, an ask or an idea or a question or whatever, some things that maybe I would have been, I don't know, maybe I would have been hesitant to take to my boss. And then I see how well it works. It kind of makes me like, oh, I actually it empowers me to be just a better, more direct, more honest, more transparent, more creative kind of leader, and take more risks and things. I think the more I lead, the more I feel empowered to be led, I guess is a weird way of saying it. Yeah.
I love that. That's super interesting. I think that what I was thinking too is like mentorship, mentoring, inside and outside the company. Like that has been so, like, I've learned more from mentoring than and coaching. I think I don't, like the network is the mentor part, I think, at this point for us. And so like the amazing, probably 40 people I could pick up the phone, call and get advice on a difficult challenge. Like that's years and years and years of developing relationships and giving and spending time in these different communities. But I get so much out of it. And I would say that that's the other part too, Kelly, is like, where you've been able to, because I talked about fit, but like the opposite side of that, when you find that right role for that person, that you see them going from great to just exceptional. And I could, maybe 10 people, or like helping people find their next job. And through that mentoring too, you like, oh, I want to work with that person. And like, I'm definitely part of my recruiting strategy. But the joy, that's true joy when you're like, oh, this was such the right fit for me. I didn't even see it. Thank you for that insight. Love when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, 1,000%. It's one of my favorite parts is when you can kind of see like, ooh, this person actually has a real opportunity over here. They haven't thought about it, but I can see that their strengths will really complement this well, and it rounds out their experience and all the things. Yeah, it's just fun, especially to kind of tap into like high potentials, or even folks who are struggling. You realize they're not struggling because they are bad at being a worker. They are struggling because they're in the wrong job. And if I can get them into the right one and all of a sudden they shine, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. That's the cool part.
Well, I'll wrap us up. This was so interesting and such great advice. And by the way, you mentioned it just made me think about it. You mentioned like the CMO network that is years and years of one in the making, but years and years of like hundreds of years of collective experience that you can tap into. I just think about the first time we met, we were at that couch on a hotel somewhere, and it was like immediately just sat down. It was like, are you struggling with this? You struggle with this? Yes, I'm having this problem. Oh, I have a guy. He does this. He's amazing. You should try this. Like, it's just like, man, there's so much collective expertise to tap into. And that comes so much from, like you said, that mentoring and that network, which is super important.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Okay, I will wrap us up. One quick question. Fun fact about Sydney Sloan. Tell us. We all want to know.
So the first thing that came to mind is, and some know this, but many probably don't, is I grew up on a cattle ranch in Northeast Washington and went to a 2-room schoolhouse until I was in 2nd grade. So it was like kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd in one room, 4th, 5th, 6th in another room. So super, super rural Washington, like, and look at this little girl now, so.
Me now.
Hard work. I learned hard work. And just this attitude from my dad of get it the same way I did, work for it. So that was always in the back of my mind when, younger in my career, is just like, I'm going to outwork everybody because I could.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love it. I just finished 1923. Have you watched it? It's so
no, not yet. Halfway. My parents actually live down the street here, so my dad wants to watch it with us. So yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they run a cattle ranch, and then they go out and they disappear for a week on end to go like round up the cattle and bring them in, and then part of the story happens in like this. They call it an Indian schoolhouse. I guess it'd be Native American schoolhouse now, but it was this idea of like these school where these kids get sent off to go, and the same thing, every grade in one classroom and all kinds of stuff. And so that was your
life. There was plenty of it totally was. I mean, I rode horses and chased cows and had to be called out of school when the cows would get out. And there was a boys ranch down the road from us that was abandoned at the time, but we took that over and made it a corn patch. And I used to sell sweet corn on the side of the road, 13 years for $1. And I was 12 years old. That was my first job. So yes. Great way to grow up, but I'm very much not into that anymore.
Well, if you ever get tired of California, Texas will welcome you with open arms. We love that lifestyle. So bring it on.
There you go. Yeah.
Cool. Well, good. Well, if anyone's listening is like, man, I want to learn more about her. I want to see what she's up to. Where's the best place to follow you, find you, connect with you?
On LinkedIn, Sid Sloan is my LinkedIn handle. And I do respond to DMs. So I really, really try.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I really enjoyed the conversation. Gave us a chance to just hang out for 30 minutes, which was awesome.
Truly exactly what it felt like. A couple of girlfriends hanging out.
That's right.
On a couch.
Awesome. Everybody else, thank you for listening to our Next Gen CMO podcast, and we'll see you next time.